Gold versus cryptocurrency, and which will come out on top if we see the eventual collapse of fiat money. Now, I did a video quite a while ago about how gold, or say Bitcoin, could be the world's currency that everybody trades in. This could easily happen. All that you would have to do for this to happen is essentially revise up the price of each of these assets. So if you take the total global money supply and divide that by either how many tons of gold there are in the world versus, or how many Bitcoins there are. We know how many Bitcoins. There's only 21 million in existence. For gold to be the sole currency everybody trades in, you need a dollar price around $14,000 an ounce or more. In today's dollars, I mean, when the eventual collapse happens, it will probably be a lot higher than $14,000 because there'll be a lot more inflation between now and then, the eventual collapse of monies. Or in today's dollar price, a $4 million Bitcoin. That is the world's total money supply divided by 21 million Bitcoins. It gives you a price around $4 million per Bitcoin. So just because the supply of gold and the supply of Bitcoin is quite small, it doesn't mean either or couldn't be the world's currency. It just means you have to revalue up the price. Now, it's quite possible if and when fiat money collapses, the people will be trading precious metals, gold and silver, alongside cryptos such as Bitcoin. But I think eventually the market will probably settle on, like how up until now the market settled on the dollar being the reserve currency, the currency in which all commodities are traded upon. We'll get to a point eventually, I think, in the future where it'll either be gold or a selected crypto, or possibly a basket of cryptocurrencies. Now, one thing that gives gold an advantage is obviously its history. Over 5,000 years of history has been used as a store of wealth for a very, very long time. And crypto hasn't really been around that long. It's only really been around since 2009. It hasn't really ever weathered a true bad financial storm. So gold has history on its side. I think in a crisis, people stick with what they know. You can explain to someone, you can show them a USB and say, look, this thing's got $10 million of Bitcoin on it. It's going to be hard for them to get their head around it. But if you show them a gold bar or, a vault with loads of gold in it, they kind of just know. Like kids from an early age, it's just in our culture. We watch cartoons, we watch films, treasure chests, pirates. It's just in our culture. We know gold, we know silver has value. So I think in a time of crisis, in a time of collapse, people will revert to what they know works. People understand gold. It's not to say crypto doesn't have certain advantages in the modern world. It can be exchanged rapidly online. I can quite easily just go on an app on my phone now, convert my pound sterling into a number of different cryptocurrencies very, very quickly, very, very easily. Physical gold. And if you're going to use gold as a wealth preserver, it really needs to be through physical, owning it physically, possibly through a third-party vault, if you trust that vault, if it's somewhere like Switzerland or possibly Australia, somewhere very secure, a secure third party you trust. But owning it through an ETF or a futures contract really isn't that secure in my opinion. So you want to have the physical gold ideally in your hand. It's much less liquid. But saying that, you can go to most high streets now in the UK. There's jewelers, there's shops that take scrap gold metal. You won't get the best price, so certainly crypto has that advantage. You're going to get a very, very good, liquid market spot price for cryptocurrency. If I took a sovereign now to a jeweler or a scrap metal place on the high street, you're going to get well below spot price, right? Because they know there's not many of these shops around. And really, if you want to sell gold, you're probably going to have to do it through a broker or online, or try and find something. It's a long-winded process. It's not really that liquid. I think in a collapse though, gold, potentially you could see a collapse where the internet doesn't work. So if you've got physical gold in your hand, that's going to be a lot more valuable to someone than just binary code on the USB stick they can't necessarily verify. So they have certain different advantages in different kind of collapse. If there's no electricity, if there's no internet, I think physical gold in your hand is going to be a lot more powerful than just a USB stick or just a long serial number of numbers potentially that may or may not exist. The market has selected gold for its properties. Its properties over a long period of time. It doesn't corrode. It's very malleable. It's very dense. It's quite hard to counterfeit. Because of its density, right? So you can take a Canadian maple or a sovereign or a Krugerrand. If you can measure its dimensions and then you weigh it, it's very, very difficult to counterfeit because gold is very dense. There's not many metals that are denser than gold, which means it's very hard to forge. Silver is easier to forge than gold, right? A silver bar is easier to forge because it's not particularly that dense. There's other metals you could put inside and then silver plates it. But gold it's hard to counterfeit. That's why the market has selected it over a long period of time. Now, Bitcoin is obviously limited. There's only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be in existence, but there's no limit to how many other new cryptocurrencies could be created, right? So there's many more cryptos than just Bitcoin. But so who's to say, the market has chosen gold out of all the metals in existence. It's selected gold because of its scarcity, because it's hard to counterfeit. Over 5,000 years, it's just aesthetic, just humans like shiny gold, right? There's many reasons why gold has been selected, but with Bitcoin, yeah, you say Bitcoin's only 21 million in existence, but there's an infinite number of other cryptos that could be created. So it's not really that different from fiat money in that sense. Yes, Bitcoin is limited, but there's no limit to how many other cryptocurrencies you could form. Whereas gold, there's only one gold, and that's the metal that people like over thousands of years of history. Now, obviously, with the 21 million Bitcoins in existence, it's fairly fixed, which means long term, if Bitcoin became the world's reserve currency, it would be deflation because there's only 21 million in existence, all that money piling in, which means, the price of Bitcoin would rapidly rise, which means, your purchasing power of Bitcoin would increase, which means deflation. Not that that's necessarily a problem. I certainly don't subscribe to the ideology that you need constant inflation. I think if you're on a fixed gold standard or a Bitcoin standard, you're going to see deflation either or currencies. But there's only 21 million Bitcoins in existence. Obviously, gold is fairly fixed, but we see about a 1 to 2% increase year on year just by the new gold being mined each year. So the gold supply does increase every year. I mean, obviously the easier gold has been mined now. So new mines that open up are obviously deeper, harder to find gold. The easy stuff we've kind of got out of the ground. So expect over time, obviously new technologies come along, but eventually the gold's going to get harder and harder to get out of the ground. Now, probably the key point to take away is I don't think the governments want to see an end to fiat money, right? Eventually, I think it will just collapse where just the average normie will just eventually realize that, fiat money has just lost control. It's just losing so much purchasing power. They want to shift to something new. But until that point happens, governments won't want to let their fiat monies, go, right? So probably the key thing to think about is what sort of legislation could be brought in place to block either or. Now, I think it's going to be easier for governments to outlaw cryptocurrency because they can say, well, people are using this cryptocurrency to do bad things on the internet, to buy things they shouldn't be buying or send money places they shouldn't be sending it because, they can argue it's harder to trace and arguments such as this. Whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. It's whether the people buy. And I think governments can probably crush down on cryptocurrencies easier. Now, if you're sophisticated with computers, even if the government outlaw it, and block websites, you're probably going to find ways around that, but you're going to have to be quite technologically in the know-how, right? I myself, if the UK government come out tomorrow say, okay, we're just going to outlaw crypto, we're going to block all these websites, I'm not 100% sure I would be able to continue buying crypto because I'm certainly no technological genius. I'm sure there's people out there probably watching this video that you would know if the UK government just blocked all the websites, you'd be able to find means and ways around it. I mean, I may be able to learn, but I'm not 100% sure. I think gold is harder for the governments to outlaw and take it off your hands. I mean, it's not to say it hasn't happened before, right? So 1933, the US government confiscated gold off its citizens, but if you didn't want to comply, if you're like, well, I don't think this is right, I think this is illegal, the government shouldn't be doing this, you could in theory hide gold. You don't need, what I'm saying is you don't need to be a technological genius to hide gold in your loft or to hide gold under your floorboards. That's a simple thing to do, whereas you have to be very technological sophisticated to work. Basically, if they outlaw crypto, there's only going to be a small percentage of people that are going to be able to manage to hang on and use their crypto. And I think that will really be a big game changer if we start seeing legislation in the future that starts clamping down on cryptos, because certainly the governments, the central banks aren't going to want to see an end to their gravy train. And if enough people start ditching fiat money, I mean, it only needs to start off with, say, a few people in 100, right? 2, 3, 5% of people start ditching it, then that could quickly create a spark a stampede of people trying to rapidly get out of the currency as they see it changing. I think the collapse of fiat money, it will probably be progress slowly over a period of years. It could just happen overnight. It could happen tomorrow, right? If bonds collapse, it could just, explode in a day, but it's probably more probable there will be a slow increase of inflation over years. Inflation just gets steadily higher and higher and higher. I mean, the governments will try and hide the inflation, but it'll get to a point where people will just be like, look, the price of my shopping is going up on a week-by-week basis. This is getting out of control now. And people start panicking and looking for something new. I think in that scenario, gold and precious metals would probably be the asset that just the average normie in the street will choose, just because they understand it. They understand how it works. They don't need to be a technological genius. I mean, there'll be a massive shortage of physical gold to go around, but I think even if people came forward and said, look, there's this where there's, you know, I mean, this technology exists already. There's, you know, gold-backed credit cards and, you know, gold debit cards and such as this. People may trust that, I think, more than a crypto that they don't really fully understand. And if they see the collapse of one fiat currency, you know, there's nothing, you know, crypto is a fiat as well, right? Someone comes along and says, okay, you know, we're just going to make this have value. Okay, there's only 21 million of them and you need to mine them. One of the reasons Bitcoin probably is more successful than other cryptos, I mean, it's well engineered, but the fact it has proof of work, right? So you have to actually mine the coin. So it simulates gold in that sense. But I think when the eventual collapse happens, it will happen quite quickly or quite rapidly. When the stampede actually comes, it will take a few years to get there. But when it eventually comes, people will go back to something that works, in my opinion. I mean, maybe people will be a lot more technologically savvy by that point as people start learning, as people start spreading information. But I thought it was just an interesting one anyway. Certainly, either gold or Bitcoin or another crypto could be the world's de facto currency. It just means a price much, much higher than we are now. I mean, I'm not anti-crypto. I'm more of a gold person myself, just because I trust it, just because it's been around so long. But I certainly wouldn't write crypto off. I think the big thing will be the legislation that comes in place if governments move to outlaw one rather than the other, or outlaw both. Gold and precious metals will be easier for the average person to continue still using. It'll be interesting how this plays out long term anyway. I think it's going to take a few more years before the average people start waking up to what is going on. But it's going to be interesting when it happens, and I don't think we're going to have to wait that many years really to find out how this eventual collapse plays out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe cryptocurrencies, maybe they'll get their act together. Maybe they'll stop debasing them and printing money. I don't see that happening, but that's another option that could happen, and we won't have to worry about any of this. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on this one, guys. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, like, comment, share, subscribe, and as always, I will see you in the next video.